It is Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. It is a Tuesday. Geoff Mosher is in for Andrew today, who pinch hit for Mosher on Monday, and we got Eagles and Giants. Week 11 is in the books. And we'll take a little look back at what happened on Sunday, a little look ahead to the G-men who looked terrible last night. What's going on, Moshe?
What's going on? Thanks for letting us bat out of order this week, Andrew.
Everything's
first.
out of order this week, man.
That's what I figure. It's Thanksgiving week.
Crazy Thanksgiving week. So let's first get your impressions of what we saw on Sunday. I got to start with, I guess, Nick Sirianni and him. I thought, did you see his locker room speech after the game?
I did.
They talked about finding an identity, and the identity isn't that we run the ball or that we're physical and tough. He said our identity is we're nasty. And whatever that nastiness is, it doesn't have to be just running the ball or whatever. It's that they're nasty. And is that, in your mind, what the identity of the Philadelphia Eagles has become this year?
Well, I mean, they're certainly playing tough in the trenches. They've been playing tough in the trenches offensively for the last 4 weeks now. And I would say over the past 2 weeks, they're starting to play better on the defensive line. And then you're seeing, I guess if you want to use that nasty label, you're seeing an approach by the defensive coordinator of being a little bit more aggressive on defense, whether it's having the corners playing press man or whether that's just the corners themselves making that decision. But he is certainly blitzing more. You've seen guys like Avonte Maddox hit pretty hard. You know, Taylor, who got hurt. Singleton came in. He was blitzing fast through the A-gaps. They are playing with a toughness, and I think that their identity right now, and things change, but certainly establishing themselves as being a difficult team up front is their identity, whether you want to call that nastiness or just girth, mass kicks ass, all those great things that we like to say about offensive and defensive line play.
Geoff, I guess the easy question would be, why did it take 6 weeks for them to notice that whatever they were doing wasn't working and that they had this right in front of their faces and didn't know about it? I mean, is it fair to be critical and say it took you 6 weeks to know what you're doing wasn't working and you had something that really works and you didn't know that?
Yeah, it's fair to be critical. Certainly we've all been. I tend to think coaches don't just wake up dumb when they're doing things wrong, right? There's an intent and a purpose to what they're doing. And I will say this in not in defense of Nick Sirianni, but in just the use of rationale and logic. They had no experience with Jalen Hurts, nor did they have an experience in Indianapolis with a quarterback who has Jalen Hurts' pedigree and acumen. And what they obviously tried to do was say, how can we put our quarterback in the best position for success? So their thought originally was, let's design an offense that was a lot like the one he succeeded with at Oklahoma. RPO heavy, you mix the run and the pass. And I don't think we should be revisionist in how we look at the first 6 weeks. They were playing really tough teams, really good quarterbacks. They had their own defensive struggles. They were behind a lot of games. Most coaches are going to be passing the ball when they're behind anyway. Now, the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've played a much lesser caliber opponent, so they've been able to do what they want to do. There's no doubt they've changed their identity. You're right that after 5 or 6 weeks, they felt we really just have to run the ball. And that probably should have been their MO from the start. But again, they were thinking one way. I don't fault them as coaches for thinking that. It did take them a while. I'm not sure. I think there's a popular sentiment going on that if they were doing this earlier, say right from the start, they would have won some of those games they lost earlier in the year. I'm not sure I believe that. You know, the San Francisco game maybe is the only one that you think might have been different, but they really didn't play well in that game at all in anything they did. They just, San Francisco was very beat up that day. But either way, they've found their identity now. It's a good thing, and we'll see how long it lasts. How long they can run the ball like this.
Yeah, I know. Sirianni made a point of pointing it out. We ran the ball for 200-plus yards against the team that formerly was the number one rush defense, which should suggest that in his mind, we ran it against the number one team. We should be able to run it against everybody. Now, at some point, Mosher, will the Giants, the Jets, who are awful at stopping the run. The Washington football team and Dallas, they are the only teams left on the schedule. Well, one of those teams come up with a game plan to say, you're not running it against us. You got to figure something out. And does Sirianni say, we are going to run it against you, whether you want to try to stop us or not? I think that is the ultimate, stare down we have coming down over the next 6 weeks here.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, and that's what football is all about. I absolutely agree with you. There will be a team that does even more to try to sell out to stop the run. And then Nick Sirianni will say, well, I don't care if you're selling out. We can just put an extra tight end in and continue to – we got numbers, you got numbers. No matter how many guys you put in the box, right? And if the Eagles are coming out with 3 wide receivers like they usually do, all right, so that's 5 on the line, 3 receivers, a quarterback, a running back, okay? So that gives you your 5-man line, and your running back is 6 guys. So they put 7 in the box. Your quarterback can run, so that's 7 on 7. They put 8 in the box. You can leave 1 unblocked defender, right, in a read option and still have the number. So the Eagles can always manipulate through their schemes, and they've been doing that lately with more quarterback design runs to find a way to even out the advantage in the run game numerically. But I do think at some point they will have to open it up and pay. Everything that you and I know about this football, about the league, from watching it for decades and decades, is the more you do something better, the more teams spend time on trying to take it away. Go back a couple of Thursday nights. The Dolphins somehow, as bad as they are, figured out a way to stop Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. They really frustrated that offense because I think they blitzed something crazy, like 60% of the time, the most in the NFL. And the Ravens didn't see it coming, and they struggled to adjust. Doesn't mean that the Ravens are going to lose every game, right? It was just one of those games that you have. And I think it's easy to look at the Eagles' schedule and say, all these quarterbacks stink. They're going to roll through and they're going to win all these games. I'm sorry. That's very unlikely to happen. They're going to stumble and someone's going to find an antidote, and it's up to the Eagles then to be able to either adjust in-game or adjust the next week to make sure it doesn't happen again.
All right, 2 things on the run game here. One, had an interesting text message from a listener yesterday who essentially suggested that the run game success stems from the quarterback and how much I'll read you the text. It says, Mike, the offensive line is playing great, but the success of the running game goes to Hurts and his ability to run the ball. He freezes defenders just enough for running backs to get downhill. You put the backup quarterback in, they're not running for 200 yards. Now, I get they might not run for 200 yards because Hurts gets a lot of those yards. But this team could run the football with this offensive line regardless of who the quarterback is, correct?
Yeah, they can run the ball well. And even with the quarterback in there are some times that their run gets stopped and then they come back with another one. I agree with his point that if you look at what the Ravens do, right, they use the run game as their foundation. And then once they get a defense thinking the run is going this way or the run's going that way is when they start running either read option. So they let a defender either come crash from the outside or from the inside. And you'll see Lamar Jackson capitalize on that and run, or they'll just start running keepers, which is sort of not necessarily read option. You're not reading anything. You're just keeping it because you're faking one way and using quarterback misdirection runs the other way. And I think the Eagles have added that the first 2 weeks. And when they beat the Lions and then when they played the Chargers and ran the ball well, they were kind of running more downhill under center. Now that they're really mostly running out of shotgun, they're using that college-like run offense, and the quarterback's running is a big part of that. But there are times where they just simply decide that we're going to run the ball down the middle, inside zone. And, I don't see like a linebacker just running with the quarterback the other way. I mean, they're trying to stop the run and at times not able to do that. So it's a help, but it's not the only reason they're running the ball this well. But I will say this about the Saints game, Mike, and maybe we're going to get to this, but when they throw the ball now, at least against the Saints, You'll notice in the first half, Jalen Hurts had almost all of his completions on 3rd down, which is strange, right? 3rd and 6, he hit Goddard. 3rd and 8, he hit Goddard. There was a 3rd and 12 that he got Devontae Smith for 33 yards. And if you watch, you can see that the Saints pass rushers are firing off the ball, but about 3 steps into their rush, they stop. They stand up. It's called a mush rush, which means they were so scared of Jalen making plays outside the pocket in the pass game that their whole intent was we're going to rush him but keep him inside the pocket. But what that did was give Jalen an extra second because now the rusher isn't coming down on him, give him an extra second or two to find his weapons in the field. So I actually think all the running that they're doing and the fear of his running really helped the passing game against the Saints.
Let's talk about the passing game because it seems to be a two-man passing game. It's either Goddard or Smith. Is that a problem?
Yes, it's a problem for two reasons. One, because like we say, you got 6 weeks here. There's still a lot of football to play. Someone's going to figure out a way to devise a scheme that's going to have those guys covered, and someone else is going to have to make a play. And then the second problem is, and you almost saw it happen, thankfully Goddard was able to come back and play, but one of these two guys leaves with an injury, they're screwed, right? If Devontae Smith walks off the field with a hobbled knee or a toe and, he's their number one target, what are they going to do? Because there's no other wide receiver, specifically perimeter wide receiver, who's making any plays right now. So that you can't run every single play as much as the Eagles would like to. You can't do that. So if one of these guys, Goddard or Smith, has to leave a game or just get schemed out of it, I think it's going to be very difficult for them.
Geoff Mosher's with us, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live. One thing, Michael Clay, he's the special teams coordinator, he said earlier today that Jalen Reagor is doing an excellent job on kickoff returns. He can't be serious, right?
I'm sure I'm sure his definition of excellent is he handling the ball? Is he making the right reads? Is he, does he get out of bounds?
Is he even doing that, though? Play? Is he making the right reads on punts? I mean, God, he's been – listen, DeCecco and I talked about this yesterday. I want to get your take. We agree that Reagor is almost useless at this point, and I hate to say it. I thought the kid was going to, obviously with Jefferson just overshadows being the next pick. I thought he'd be useful. I don't like the way they're using him. Maybe that's the offense, but at this point, would Greg Ward give them more? It's almost as if Hurts doesn't trust Reagor to even throw him the ball. Ward is a guy that I think you can at least say, I know he's going to catch it. He's going to run a good route. He's going to get himself open. He might not be explosive, but we're getting nothing from this guy. Would they be better off substituting Ward as their slot guy and maybe Watkins on the outside?
I don't believe so. Because I don't believe everything that is contributing to Jalen Reagor not having production is all about Jalen Reagor. 2 weeks ago, he had one target against the Broncos. He actually caught it, even though the ball was underthrown. He made a sprawling catch, if you remember, on a kind of a comeback, and that was it. And then 2 days ago, Sunday, they give him the obligatory screen that always loses yards, which is a lot of blocking. I mean, that's not him. That at the time he gets the ball, he gets swamped. That's not on him. And then the one target that went to him was once again underthrown by about 3 yards, and he didn't even have a chance to dive and make a play. If you're going to take him out and put Greg Ward in, Greg Ward is fundamentally a slot receiver. So you're going to put him in the slot. You're going to put Quez Watkins outside and think that that's going to do something different from your offense. I don't see it because I don't see any other evidence that anybody, whether it's Greg Ward, other than the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside catch on an RPO that everybody's making a big deal about, other than that, there is nobody else who has been getting a consistent amount of targets or making catches, including Quez Watkins. So, and Quez dropped a pass that was perfectly placed for him 2 weeks ago. He barely got his hands on it. So I think it's more of a byproduct of you're running the ball 60 to 70% of the time. Your targets when you pass, 80% of them go to Smith and Goddard. There's only a few scraps left for everybody else. And on those few scraps left for everybody else, Jalen doesn't always make the best throw to him, as evidence what I just said about Reagor. So while I fully acknowledge that someone has to be a third option for this team, I also have to put it on the play calling, the quarterback, and the receiver, not just put it all on one guy.
A couple things here. Jordan Howard looks like he's going to miss at least a game. How does that affect the running game's success? I mean, is he?
Yeah, greatly. Yeah, I think. I mean, he's their downhill runner. He gets you the tough yards. He almost never loses yards, although he did have one negative run, I think, 2 days ago. But he has been a big part of their turnaround. I think Miles Sanders is a guy that, I'm sure they were frustrated with his ball security, and they would have loved to have given Jordan Howard even more carries because he doesn't put the ball on the ground. He's done well. So now you're looking at Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, and I imagine Kenneth Gainwell will be active for the game if Jordan Howard is down. And those are all three good backs, and we know Boston Scott kills the Giants, but it just doesn't have that kind of short yardage, downhill, powerful presence that Jordan Howard has been giving them.
All right. Obviously, the defense has had some changes too. So let's kind of zone in on a couple of things that they did maybe differently this week. What have they added? You got a little bit of deception. You got a little bit of, more pressure coming from different spots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you saw nickel cornerback blitzes, you saw safety blitzes, you saw linebacker blitzes, you saw a variety of movement, both pre and post snap. And, that's the type of thing you should do against a Trevor Siemian and against an offensive line that's without its starting two offensive tackles. So I imagine that Jonathan Gannon's going to watch this tape from last night of the Giants and the Bucs and say, geez, if I just put a little bit of pressure on this guy, he may wind up throwing it to one of my fat guys like he did to McClendon there. So, I mean, you would hope and like to think that Jonathan Gannon will continue to do what he's been doing for the last few weeks, which is really mixing up the coverages and sending a little bit more pressure.
Yeah. How about Davion Taylor being out? Howard was a new entry into their lineup to help the offense. Taylor was a new addition to the defense. How does that affect what John Gannon wants to do defensively if he has to miss the next couple games?
You know what? I don't think it makes that huge of a difference, Mike. I think that Alex Singleton is not – he's different than Davion Taylor, but I don't know that he's worse than Davion Taylor. Davion has stabilized. He and TJ Edwards have kind of stabilized the defense, and Davion comes out basically on passing downs. He's mostly in there for athleticism on the running plays. But Alex, was part of and he still plays a decent amount. I think he played 85% of the snaps, or maybe all 85 snaps. I forget what it was. He played a lot of snaps against the Saints, and they seem to do fine. He's not great of a downhill run stopping linebacker, but neither is Davion Taylor. TJ Edwards is the one that's really good at that. And Taylor has been okay. He's not hurting them as much as he used to, but he's still a guy who doesn't know where he should be all the time. He's still learning the game. They've just been able to kind of cover that up by playing better lately. So I don't think there's going to be that big of a difference. I'd be more worried if TJ Edwards was the guy who was limping off the field and not able to play.
It's funny because Edward was signed yesterday. He gets a 1-year extension. I mean, and I guess they have Taylor, a third-round pick, and, you start to question, do they think they have their linebacking core figured out?
I think that they figured out that they would like to have TJ Edwards back for next year, and that he does make a difference in them on first and second down. And his interception was incredible, by the way. I mean, it's amazing that he wound up giving up the touchdown on the next series to Troutman, and he was right there because that interception was a type of athleticism that we haven't seen from TJ Edwards. I mean, he jumped to grab the ball out of the air. It wasn't a great throw, but it was still required some good instincts on his part to go get it. But he's obviously been a difference maker since he got into the lineup. He's going to be here next year. Who knows where the Eagles are going to take a linebacker in the draft, even if they do it at all, or what kind of free agent they might sign. But they're obviously not very deep, and they're not very talented at the position. So it made sense to give TJ at least an extra year while they try to work through and figure this thing out.
Yeah. Geoff Mosher with us, Football at 4 here. Obviously, we saw the Giants last night just look like a team in complete disarray. I don't want to overlook this team, and a lot of people have said, look, you got the Giants, you got the Jets, you've got Washington. There's a lot of winnable games here. But I guess the question I look at is, obviously the Eagles are in the playoff mix now. They're a half a game out. But the question maybe is the organization ahead of schedule?
Man, that's kind of hard to say right now, right? I mean, if they finish, I felt that they were a 7 to 8 win team going into the year, low 6. If things didn't go well, and they certainly could still be an 8-win team at the end of the year. And I think that they're still going to be.
Well, you win 8-9 games. Questions. You doubled up your wins from last year.
Yeah, right? But last year was an anomaly. I don't think that they expected to be a 4-win team last year.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, and I think that if you're being fair, and we talked about this, you knew going into the year that the Eagles had more talent than a 4-win team, that they had a lot of talent on the offensive and defensive lines, that they had a cornerback who had been to the Pro Bowl 3 times, and that they had good running backs. So, I mean, there was no reason to think that they were going to be a 3 or 4-win team unless they were just besieged by injuries and the coaches were terrible. I mean, you never know what's going to happen, but they were not the Texans is what I'm getting at, or they were not the Jaguars where you really struggle to see any blue chip players. They had proven talent.
Yeah. Oh, listen, there was a reason at the beginning of the year. I said, look, this team reminded me a lot of the Andy Reid last team to the Chip Kelly team. They won the 4 games. They lost 4 offensive linemen that year, and then they get all 4 linemen back, and Chip wins 10 games. Now, I thought 10 games might have been – I said their ceiling to me was 10, but, thought 8, 9, somewhere in there, and that was just all based on this offensive line. If they're healthy, you can win games with this line, and you're seeing that now. So are they ahead of schedule? Are they behind schedule? I don't know where this organization, when they look at themselves in the mirror, I have no idea what they see, and I guess a lot of that is based on the quarterback. What do they think of this guy? That's they need to answer that question, because I think everything else is the offense seems like you could play another year with this offense. If you didn't, you might want to get a veteran receiver, maybe get another something here or there. They got to get an impact player on defense. But number one, they got to decide, is this our guy? Because otherwise you're going to be in this limbo of, well, we bring another quarterback. How does he fit the personnel we have already?
Exactly. The problem with trying to figure out if a team is ahead of schedule or behind schedule or where they're at in whatever growth chart they're supposed to be on is you just don't know what's going to happen in the off season. Some guys, what is Fletcher Cox coming back next year? Is Jason Kelsey coming back next year? Like you just mentioned, what about the quarterback? Is he coming back next year? So there's a whole lot of guesswork involved that can change. I think I brought this up with you a week or two ago. I said, the Miami Dolphins went 10-6 last year, and I bet you all their fans and the ownership and the coaches thought, yeah, we're starting it. We're doing this. Is even we were rotating quarterbacks between Tua and Fitz, and we won 10 games, so we're ahead of schedule. And then all of a sudden they make some terrible moves and they're back to being a crap team. So
I did a segment on this like a week or two ago, is that NFL teams realistically, you're not building, you're almost year to year because of the nature of, in other leagues, the schedule's always the same. You build a team based on your division and what's going on, and you play the same teams. Your schedule changes every year in the NFL. So the way you're built one year may work against the 11 teams that are not in your division. The next year, you may have been built one way, and then the new 11 teams you face are not the right matchups for you. So it is very difficult to keep consistency based on the nature of the schedule constantly changing. Your roster build may not fit the non-conference opponents that you get the next year.
That's absolutely true. I think the only teams that really fit that criteria of they stripped it down with the intent to collaborate or stockpile picks and build it up were like the Browns a few years ago. The Dolphins are trying to do it, but they're not succeeding. The Texans clearly are doing that, but everybody else is kind of in the same boat. Even if and the Jaguars might also, because they trade away Ngakoue, they trade away Ramsey, they trade away Foles, they traded away everybody they could to get assets for, and now they got a truckload of picks, and we'll see what happens there. But everyone who's coming off a bad year, I mean, you're really still trying to win, and you're trying to make moves year to year to get better so you can start to win as soon as possible.
And I think that's why you see this parity mediocrity is that the 1 year you have 10 wins, the next year you have 8 because your schedule changed. We didn't match up really well with that team. We matched up much better with the schedule we had the year before. And you're just seeing this, rat race here, in which the Eagles are right in the middle with everybody else. Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. And, of course, you can check out the Inside the Birds podcast. You guys will have pregame 10 o'clock on the YouTube channel. That'll be Sunday for Eagles and Giants. And, of course, you can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Moshe, are you back tomorrow?
All right, my friend. I'm on with you tomorrow, correct? At 4 o'clock?
I'm just making sure. Double disco. 2 days in a row.
That's right.
Mosher. We got a lot more to discuss. We'll look a little bit more at the Eagles and Giants game tomorrow with Moshe. And, of course, you can listen to the latest edition of the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, Moshe, take care, man.
All right, take care.
There's Geoff Mosher, and of course, Football at 4 is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long, Wild Wild West. Tropicana, where I am today, here at Chickies and Pete's, and Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com.